It started on a Thursday night, the kind of night you come home tired, but proud, the kind where you think life is stable. I had just signed a new client for my construction business, and all I wanted was to share the good news with my wife, Emily. We'd been married for 7 years. 7 years of bills, birthdays, and small fights that we always managed to patch up before bed. I thought that was love, the kind built on teamwork, not fireworks. That night, Emily told me she was going out with her coworkers. Girls' night, she said, kissing my cheek. I didn't think twice. She looked stunning, blue dress, silver heels, her favorite perfume floating behind her like a soft memory. I remember saying, "Have fun. Text me if you need a ride." She smiled. "Don't wait up." I didn't point 2 hours later. Sitting alone with a beer in my hand, I opened my phone. I don't know why I did it, maybe boredom, maybe instinct. Emily wasn't the type to post much, but I knew her coworkers loved to go live on social media. So, from a fake account I'd made months ago to keep an eye on my teenage niece's posts, I searched for her name. And there it was, a live stream. 5 women laughing around a table at a fancy rooftop bar. Music, cocktails, the glitter of city lights. And Emily right in the middle, glowing like a movie star. I should have smiled. I should have been happy seeing her that carefree. But then her coworker, Lisa, leaned toward her with a grin. "Emily," she said, "be honest. Do you actually love your husband, or are you just staying for the money?" It was supposed to be a joke. Everyone laughed. Everyone, except me. Emily rolled her eyes, smiling, that smile she uses when she's tipsy. "He's a paycheck, not a soulmate," she said, laughing into her drink. The table erupted in laughter. Someone shouted, "Girl, you savage." But all I heard was silence. Then I saw something that turned my stomach cold. Behind Emily, at the next table, was my brother, Mark. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be visiting his girlfriend in Boston. He raised his glass toward the camera and smirked. Like he knew. I don't remember breathing. I just stared at the screen while comments scrolled by, strangers laughing, heart emojis, queen energy reactions. I sat there for a full minute before closing the app. That minute felt like my entire marriage collapsing in slow motion. I sat there in the dark, the light from my phone fading on my hands. The same hands that had worked overtime to pay off her student loans, to build her a home, to make her dreams possible. I thought about every grocery trip, every late-night drive, every small gesture I thought mattered. And suddenly, it all felt stupid, like I'd been living in a dream where only I believed in us. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing her voice, "He's a paycheck, not a soulmate." I wondered when she started feeling that way. Was it after the first year? The fifth? Or was it always there, buried under fake smiles and polite kisses? Around 3 a.m., I walked into our bedroom. Her perfume still hung in the air. Her side of the bed was empty. I just sat there, staring at the moonlight on her pillow, wondering if she'd ever once looked at me and thought, "I'm lucky." The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. 53 messages. All from her. "Babe, please answer. It was just a joke. You weren't supposed to see that. Can we talk?" I swear I didn't mean it. "I'm outside your office." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to the lake, the one we used to visit on Sunday mornings. The place where I proposed to her. I parked the truck, sat there for hours, and thought about the first time I saw her cry, the night her mom passed away. I held her all night. That was the moment I promised I'd never let her feel alone. Funny how promises can become weapons when they're one-sided. By noon, I finally went to my office. She was waiting there, standing by the front door, red-eyed and shaking. When she saw me, she ran over, trying to hug me, but I stepped back. "Please, Jason," she said softly. "You don't understand. It was just a joke." I interrupted. "You called me a paycheck, Emily." In front of the world. Tears rolled down her face. "I didn't mean it." Lisa pushed me, and I just said something stupid. "You know how I get after a few drinks, yeah," I said. "I also know my brother was there." That stopped her. Her eyes widened. "What?" "Don't act surprised. He was sitting right behind you." Smiled at the camera. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. That silence told me more than any excuse ever could. I walked past her and unlocked my office door. "Go home, Emily," I said quietly. "We'll talk later." But she didn't move. She grabbed my arm, crying harder. "Please, Jason, don't do this. You're overreacting." I turned and looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who once wrote me love notes before work now stood there defending a lie instead of admitting the truth. "If I'm overreacting," I said, "then maybe you should ask yourself why you're scared right now." I closed the door behind me and just stood there, my back pressed against it. On the other side, I could hear her sobbing, knocking, whispering my name. Then silence. That silence felt heavier than anything I'd ever known. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a cheap motel off Highway 8. The sheets smelled like detergent and cigarette smoke, but it was quiet. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. I thought about all the times I'd ignored the signs, the nights she stayed out late, the sudden new clothes, the constant phone in her hand. I thought about Mark, my brother, my best friend growing up, and how easily he'd raise that glass. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I realized something. Maybe the betrayal didn't start that night. Maybe it started the moment I began loving her more than I loved myself, and that was the night everything changed. The morning after that motel night felt like waking up inside a storm. My phone blinked on the nightstand with a dozen missed calls, most of them from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I didn't have the energy to face the world. The sun outside was bright and merciless, slicing through the blinds like it wanted to drag me back to reality. When I finally gathered the strength to check my messages, there were more than 80 unread texts from Emily, from my mom, from coworkers who'd somehow already heard. Word travels fast in a small town. Someone must have clipped the live stream and shared it. I didn't need to open the video again. Every frame of it was burned into my memory. I drove home around noon. The house looked exactly the same, perfect lawn, the wind chime she loved spinning gently in the breeze, but it felt hollow, like the walls knew. Emily's car was in the driveway. For a second I thought about turning around, but a part of me needed to see her one last time before deciding what came next. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch clutching a mug of coffee with both hands, eyes swollen from crying. "Jason," she whispered when she saw me. "Please, just listen." I didn't answer. I sat down across from her, my hands clasped so tightly the knuckles turned white. She started talking fast, tripping over her words, how it was all pressure, how Lisa dared her to say something shocking, how she never thought anyone would take it seriously. I let her talk until her voice cracked. Then I said quietly, "So it was just a dare?" Her lips trembled. "Yes. I swear it was stupid, Jason. I would never mean that. You know I love you." I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But something inside me had shifted. Trust doesn't survive humiliation. "And Mark?" I asked. "What was he doing there?" She froze. A small sound escaped her throat, part sigh, part panic. "He showed up later. I didn't know he'd be there." "You didn't invite him?" "No, did you talk to him?" Her silence lasted too long. I could almost hear the gears turning behind her eyes. "He came over to say hi," she said finally, too carefully. "That's all." I leaned back, staring at her. The woman sitting in front of me looked like Emily, but sounded like someone reading from a script. I remembered the look on Mark's face in the livestream, that smug half-smile. Brothers know each other's tells, and that smirk wasn't random. I stood up. "I'm going to stay at Mom's for a few days," I said. Her eyes widened. "Jason, please. Don't do this. We can fix it." "I don't even know what it is anymore," I said. "You called me a paycheck, Emily. You made our life a punchline." When I reached the door, she grabbed my arm again. Her fingers were ice cold. "I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, just don't leave." I pulled away. "You already left. You just didn't tell me when." At my mother's house, the memories hit harder than I expected. I hadn't stayed there since my father's funeral. Mom took one look at me and didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. The smell of her cinnamon candles filled the living room, and for a moment I felt 10 years old again, safe but small. That night, Mark called. I stared at his name flashing on the screen, heart pounding. After a minute, I answered, Jay, man, I need to explain. I cut him off. Explain what? That you were at the bar with my wife? That you raised a glass while she humiliated me? Dude, it wasn't like that, he said quickly. I didn't even know she was going live. I just saw her there with her friends. I waved because I thought it was funny. Funny, I repeated. You think watching your brother get mocked is funny? He went quiet. Then he sighed. Look, Emily messed up. But you know she loves you. Don't throw everything away over one stupid night. I hung up after that call. Something inside me snapped for good. I realized I wasn't just angry, I was exhausted. I'd spent years carrying a marriage that looked perfect from the outside and hollow inside. I'd ignored the nights she turned away, the excuses about overtime, the sudden bursts of defensiveness when I asked simple questions. The live stream wasn't a random joke, it was a confession disguised as humor. 2 days later, Emily showed up at my mom's doorstep. She looked different, smaller somehow, like the weight of what she'd done was finally pressing down. I just want to talk, she said. Mom glanced at me, then left us alone in the kitchen. Emily reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I deleted my social accounts, she said. I quit my job. I'll do whatever it takes, Jason. I just need you to come home. Why now? I asked. Because you're sorry or because people found out? She flinched. Because I love you. I shook my head. No. You love the life I gave you. There's a difference. She started crying again, but I couldn't feel anything anymore. No rage, no pity, just a dull ache that had settled into my chest. I told her I needed time, and that's exactly what I took. Weeks passed. I went back to work, tried to keep busy, tried to forget the image of her laughing while calling me a paycheck. But every night, when the job was done and the noise faded, it all came back, the laughter, the betrayal, the smirk on my brother's face. One evening, after closing a deal downtown, I stopped by the lake again. The water was still, reflecting the orange sky like glass. I sat there until the sun disappeared, thinking about how life can shatter quietly. You don't always hear the crack until it's too late. That's when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Jason, you deserve the truth. Call me. Lisa. For a moment I just stared at the screen, feeling the air drain from my lungs. Lisa, Emily's coworker, the one who had asked the question on the live stream. The message ended with a second line. It wasn't just a joke. You need to know what really happened that night. Lisa's message sat on my phone screen for nearly 10 minutes before I could breathe properly again. I must have read it a dozen times, each word hitting harder than the last. It wasn't just a joke. You need to know what really happened that night. I didn't want to call her. Part of me didn't want to know anything more. Ignorance can be merciful when the truth already hurts this much. But another part of me, the one that still couldn't sleep without replaying that live stream, needed answers. So I called. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was nervous, trembling, like she'd been waiting for me. Jason? Yeah, I said. It's me. Thank God, she whispered. I've been trying to find the courage to talk to you. There was a pause, the kind that fills a room with tension even over the phone. You said you had something to tell me, I reminded her. I do, she said, exhaling shakily. But not like this. Can we meet? Somewhere quiet. We agreed to meet the next morning at a small coffee shop near downtown, one of those old-fashioned places with wooden booths and the smell of burnt espresso hanging in the air. I barely slept that night. I didn't know if I was walking into another lie or the last piece of the truth. Lisa looked tired when I saw her. Her hair was pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. No makeup, nothing like the loud, laughing woman from the live stream. When I sat down across from her, she didn't waste time. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I should have stopped it. That night, it got out of hand. Just tell me what happened, I said flatly. She nodded, fingers trembling as she stirred her untouched coffee. Emily had been drinking a lot. We all were. At first it was just fun, music, jokes, the usual. Then Mark showed up. I froze. So he was there for her? Lisa hesitated. He said he just wanted to surprise her. He told us he was your brother. Emily looked shocked at first, but not angry. They talked for a while, away from the table. I felt my stomach twist. How long is a while? Maybe 15, 20 minutes. When she came back, she was different, quiet, distracted. Then someone made that joke about husbands, and I pushed her to answer. I thought it'd be funny. She looked down. But she wasn't joking, Jason. The way she said it, it sounded like anger. Like she was trying to hurt someone. Me, I said. She nodded slowly. Yeah, you. The room seemed to spin for a moment. My hands were trembling against the table. And after that? Lisa swallowed hard. After the stream ended, she and Mark left together. She told us you'd called and she needed a ride home, but she didn't look like she was heading home. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Where did they go? I asked quietly. I don't know, she said. But when I texted her the next morning, she didn't reply. Later that week, she told everyone at work she'd had a big fight with you and might stay somewhere else for a bit. I couldn't hear the rest. My mind was already elsewhere, in that gap of time I'd never questioned before. The night of the live stream, she'd come home around 1 a.m. I remembered the faint smell of whiskey, the lipstick slightly smudged, the silence when she crawled into bed beside me. I'd thought it was just exhaustion. Now I knew better. I thanked Lisa and left, walking straight out into the sunlight. The world felt too bright, too loud. Every sound, car horns, chatter, footsteps, blurred into a single, buzzing noise. I don't remember driving home. I don't even remember unlocking the front door. I just remember standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the framed wedding photo on the wall. We looked happy in that picture. Emily's hand rested gently on my chest, her smile soft and real. I wondered what she was thinking that day. Maybe she already knew she could hurt me one day, and I'd still forgive her. That night, I didn't call her. I didn't even tell my mother. I just sat at my desk, staring at my phone, scrolling through old messages, birthdays, miss you texts, little love notes from years ago. Every word felt fake now. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was her. Emily, are you okay? Emily, please talk to me. Emily, I miss you. I typed back, where were you after the live stream, and waited. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. Then again. Finally, her reply came, with friends. Why? I stared at the screen. Lies, even now. So I sent her one final message. Don't lie to me again, Emily. I know about Mark. 5 minutes of silence. Then, who told you? That was all I needed to see. Not denial. Not confusion. Just who told you. The truth hit me harder than any scream or confession ever could. She wasn't even shocked, just cornered. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, sat in the dark, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not out of anger, but out of grief for the man I used to be, for the love I thought I had, for the family I believed I'd built. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace, but peace doesn't come easy when betrayal has your brother's face, because 2 days later, Mark showed up at my door, and that's when everything got worse. 2 days after the call to the lawyer, I heard a knock at the door. It was early, too early for visitors, and the sound hit like a jolt through my chest. I opened the door, and there he was. Mark. My brother. The same man who used to sneak out of the house with me to fish at dawn, who stood beside me on my wedding day with pride in his eyes. Only now, his face carried something different, guilt, exhaustion, maybe shame. Jay, he said quietly. We need to talk. I should have slammed the door. But I didn't. I just stepped aside and let him in, because that's what you do when your heart still remembers the boy you grew up with. He walked to the kitchen table and sat down like he'd done it 1,000 times before, hands clasped tight. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking clock on the wall, stretching every second into an ache. Finally, I said, You were there that night. He nodded, eyes fixed on the table. Yeah, with Emily. Another nod. Why? He swallowed hard. It wasn't supposed to go that far. My hands clenched. What does that far mean, Mark? He looked up then, and I saw the truth before he said it. The flicker of regret, the fear, the small cowardly hope that maybe I already knew and would make it easy for him. She called me earlier that evening, he said. Said she needed to talk to someone. Said she felt like you didn't see her anymore, that you were always working. I told her to meet me for a drink, just to listen. I thought I could help. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Help? You went to comfort your brother's wife at a bar. I know how it sounds, he said. But she was breaking down. And I made the mistake of letting her talk me into staying longer. She kept ordering drinks. Then the live stream started. I didn't know she'd say what she did. And after the stream? I asked, voice low. He hesitated. That hesitation was all the answer I needed. Tell me the truth, Mark. He looked away, his jaw tight. She kissed me, he said finally. It was quick. I pulled away. But I didn't stop her soon enough. The room spun. I pushed back from the table, pacing the floor, trying to breathe. Every word was like a nail in the coffin of my old life. You let her kiss you, I repeated, more to myself than to him. My wife. I'm sorry, he said, voice cracking. It was a mistake, Jason. I swear nothing else happened. I told her it couldn't. I told her she needed to fix things with you. I turned to him slowly. You expect me to believe that? After everything? I know I don't deserve that, he said. But it's the truth. I haven't spoken to her since that night. I stared at him for a long time. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he wasn't. Either way, something between us had broken that could never be repaired. I'd always believed betrayal came from strangers, but the worst kind comes from blood. Get out, I said quietly. He stood, eyes red. Jay, get out. He hesitated, then nodded. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt final, like the sound of a bridge burning. That night, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table long after the sun had gone down. The lawyer had emailed the draft papers. Seeing my marriage reduced to legal paragraphs and signatures hit harder than I expected. Each line was another reminder that love can die in silence long before anyone admits it. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and scrolled through my phone again. Emily's last message still sat there unanswered. Who told you? I deleted it. Then, almost without thinking, I opened my photo gallery. Every memory, vacations, birthdays, her laughing in the kitchen, looked like evidence of a life that had been half true. I didn't sleep. Around dawn, I drove to the lake again. Mist rose off the water, soft and pale. It was the same place I'd proposed, the same place where she once told me I was her safe place. I sat there until the sun broke through, painting the world gold, and realized something. I couldn't keep waiting for an apology that would never fix what was gone. So I decided to move forward. I met with the lawyer, signed the papers, and sent them to Emily with no note. No anger. Just silence. That evening, my phone rang again, an unknown number. For a second, I thought it might be her. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Jason. A woman's voice, older, gentle. This is Margaret. I'm Emily's mother. I froze. She told me what happened, Margaret said softly. I just want you to know. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of this. She's been a mess since you left. I swallowed hard. I don't hate her, I said. I just can't go back. I know, she said. Sometimes love isn't enough. But if it helps, she's finally realizing what she lost. After the call ended, I sat there for a long time staring at nothing. Maybe Margaret was right. Maybe Emily was sorry. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. It only reminds you it's gone. That night, I wrote one final note, not to send, but to end things in my own heart. I hope you find peace, Emily. I hope one day I can too. I folded the paper, placed it inside the wedding photo frame, and set it face down on the table. For the first time in months, the house felt quiet, not empty, just quiet. The day I walked into the lawyer's office, the sky was gray, an overcast heaviness that felt almost staged, as if the world wanted to match the weight inside my chest. The air smelled faintly of rain and old coffee, and every sound, the tapping of pens, the hum of a printer, seemed too loud, too real. Mr. Miller, the receptionist said, looking up with a polite smile. They're ready for you. I nodded and followed her down a narrow hallway lined with framed degrees and empty promises. My lawyer, a calm middle-aged man named Alan Porter, greeted me with that practiced empathy lawyers learn to wear like a suit. He gestured to a chair. I've finalized everything, he said, sliding a folder toward me. You'll just need to sign here, here, and here. My name, Jason Miller, looked strange on the paper, like it belonged to someone else. Every signature felt like carving initials into a gravestone. I hesitated at the last page, where it said reason for divorce, irreconcilable differences. Those two words felt so small for what had actually happened. Betrayal. Humiliation. The kind of heartbreak that claws at your chest in the middle of the night. But the law doesn't care about emotions, it just needs definitions. When I finished, Alan glanced up. Do you want us to send a copy directly to her? Yes, I said quietly. No contact. He nodded. Understood. As I stood to leave, he added, Jason. I've seen hundreds of cases like this. It won't feel like it now, but signing those papers is the first step toward getting your life back. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out into the drizzle. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cars honked, people rushed by with coffee cups and phones glued to their ears. But for me, time had slowed. I stood under a building awning, watching the rain blur everything, thinking about the years I had given to a woman who once said she couldn't imagine a day without me. I remembered our first apartment, tiny, messy, but alive with laughter. The nights we stayed up talking about dreams, kids, and travel. The way she used to fall asleep with her head on my shoulder, whispering, "Promise me we'll never change." And now, this was what change looked like. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. For a moment, I thought it might be Margaret, her mother. But it wasn't. It was her. I almost didn't answer. But part of me needed to hear her voice one last time. Jason, she said softly. I got the papers. I said nothing. I know you don't owe me anything. But I need to tell you I'm sorry. Not because I want you back. I want you to know I hate myself for what I said. For what I did. Her voice cracked, and for a second I could hear the girl I fell in love with, buried under guilt and regret. You broke me, Emily, I said finally. Not just with what you did, but how public you made it. You turned our life into entertainment. And I don't know how to unsee that. I know, she whispered. That stream was supposed to be a joke. I didn't mean. I cut her off. You meant every word. Maybe not the way you said it, but deep down, you believed it. That I was just a paycheck. Silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end, small and uneven. I miss you, she said finally. Not the fights, not the hurt. Just you. I miss who we were, I said. But we don't exist anymore. She started crying quietly, and I closed my eyes. There was a time I would have done anything to stop her tears. Now, all I could do was listen until the line went dead. The next few weeks blurred together. I buried myself in work, in the gym, in anything that kept me from thinking. Friends tried to set me up, tried to take me out, but I wasn't ready. It wasn't about love, it was about trust. Once someone looks you in the eye and lies, something fundamental breaks. Point. One evening, I came home to find an envelope at my door. No return address. Inside was a small note in her handwriting. I won't bother you again. But please remember, you were never just a paycheck. You were my heart, even when I forgot how to treat you like it. There was also a keychain inside, the one from our honeymoon in Lake Tahoe. The one I thought she'd lost. I stared at it for a long time. Then, without a word, I put it in a drawer and closed it. Maybe that was closure. Maybe it wasn't. But for the first time, I didn't feel angry. Just tired. Weeks later, I finally met Alan again to finalize the process. It's done, he said. You're officially divorced. I nodded slowly. Thank you. He gave a small smile. So, what now? I thought about that. About the empty house, the quiet mornings, the way her laughter used to echo in these walls. And for the first time, I didn't feel the sting. I felt possibility. I think I'll take a trip, I said. Somewhere far. Somewhere I can remember who I was before all this. Alan nodded. Good idea. As I walked out of his office, the sun was finally breaking through the clouds. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man who'd been left behind. I felt like someone walking towards something new. Maybe healing doesn't happen all at once. Maybe it's slow, like learning how to breathe again after drowning. I didn't know where the road ahead would take me. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't just a paycheck, not anymore. The morning I left the city, the sky was clear for the first time in weeks. The rain that had clung to my days finally let go, leaving the streets washed clean, glistening under a soft sunrise. My car was packed with just the essentials: a suitcase, a few books, my camera, and the old keychain I swore I'd thrown away but couldn't. I didn't know where exactly I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay. I drove for hours, letting the road blur the thoughts in my head. Every mile put distance between me and the version of myself who used to wait for her calls, check his phone every hour, wonder if maybe he'd overreacted. Somewhere along that stretch of highway, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty. And sometimes emptiness is where healing begins. By afternoon, I reached Willow Springs, a small town tucked between mountains and rivers. The kind of place where time slows down and people wave at strangers. I checked into a small lakeside cabin, nothing fancy, just quiet. When the owner handed me the keys, she said, "You look like someone who needs the sound of water more than Wi-Fi." I smiled for the first time in months. She was right. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the lake catch the light of a million stars. It had been years since I'd seen a sky that clear. The city had hidden too much, just like I had. I thought of Emily again, but not with anger or longing. Just a kind of distant gratitude. She had broken me, yes, but she had also freed me. The next morning, I walked into the only cafe in town, a cozy little place called the Driftwood Bean. It smelled like roasted coffee and vanilla, and soft jazz played somewhere in the background. Behind the counter stood a woman about my age, hair tied in a loose braid, eyes a soft hazel that seemed to carry stories of their own. "First time here?" she asked with a smile. "Yeah," I said. "Just passing through." "Well," she said, "if you like peace and pie, you'll stay longer than you planned to." Her name was Nora. I didn't mean to notice how gentle her voice was, or how she laughed easily at small things. I didn't mean to sit there longer than I planned to, either, but something about that cafe felt safe. Familiar in a way that didn't hurt. Over the next few days, I found myself going back there. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes just for silence. Nora and I talked about books, music, the kind of movies that make you cry without knowing why. She never asked about my past, and I never offered it. But she had this way of making space for silence, like she understood it didn't always need to be filled. One afternoon, I found myself telling her about photography. "I used to take pictures all the time," I said. "Then life got busy." "Busy or heavy?" she asked, tilting her head. "Both," I admitted. She smiled softly. "Then maybe it's time to start again." That evening, I did. I walked along the lakeshore, camera in hand, and started capturing the world again: reflections, ripples, fading light. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. Through the lens, I saw beauty again, quiet and unbothered by my pain. Weeks passed. I learned the rhythm of the town, the morning fog, the kids biking by, the fishermen who whistled old songs. Nora and I talked often, sometimes for hours. I never called it friendship, but it wasn't romance either. It was something gentler, a reminder that kindness could exist without expectation. Then one evening, as the sky turned orange and pink, she sat beside me on the porch of the cafe. "You smile more now," she said softly. "I guess I'm remembering how," I replied. She nodded. "That's good. Smiling's underrated." For a while, we just sat there, watching the water. Then she asked, "What brought you here, really?" I hesitated. But something about the way she asked, calm, without judgment, made me answer, "My wife," I said. "Or my ex-wife." Nora didn't flinch or pity me. She just said, "Then I'm glad she did. Because if she hadn't hurt you, you wouldn't have found this place." Her words lingered in the air, soft but sharp in their truth. That night, I looked at my reflection in the lake. The man staring back wasn't the broken version I'd been for months. His shoulders weren't as heavy. His eyes had a little light again. Healing, I realized, doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the form of a stranger who offers you coffee and reminds you that life still exists outside your pain. As I walked back to the cabin, I caught myself thinking something dangerous, something new. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was just the middle. It was late September when the air in Willow Springs began to cool. The lake shimmered with early morning mist, and leaves had started turning gold along the waterline. I'd been in that town for almost 3 months, long enough for the locals to start calling me the city guy who takes pictures. My days had fallen into a calm rhythm: sunrise walks, coffee at the Driftwood Bean, quiet evenings editing photos by the window. Nora had become part of that rhythm too. She didn't ask for more, and I didn't offer it. There was peace in that unspoken understanding, but even peace has echoes. And mine still carried her name. Emily.it happened one night when I was cleaning out the drawer in the cabin. I found the framed photo I'd shoved there weeks ago, the one of me and her laughing on the beach. Sand on our feet, wind in our hair. It didn't look like two people who would one day become strangers. I held it for a long time. Not with anger this time, but with something quieter. Nostalgia, maybe. The kind that hurts, but also heals. That's when I realized I needed to say something, not to her, but to myself. So I sat down at the small wooden desk, took out a piece of paper, and began to write. Dear Emily, I don't know if I'll ever send this. Maybe it's better if I don't. But there are words that have lived in my chest for too long, and they deserve a place to rest. When you said what you said on that live stream, something inside me broke. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how easily they left your mouth. You turned the life we built into a story for strangers, and I didn't know how to come back from that. For a long time, I hated you. I hated the sound of your name, your laughter, even the smell of your perfume when it lingered on old clothes. But hate, I've learned, is just love that hasn't found a place to go. And now I think mine finally has. I forgive you, Emily, not because you asked for it or because you deserve it, but because I can't keep carrying this anymore. I forgive you for the words, for the betrayal, for the silence that followed. I forgive you for being human, just like I've learned to forgive myself for being blind to our cracks. You once told me that love changes people. You were right, it does. But sometimes it changes us into strangers. And that's okay. Some stories aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to teach us who we are when the lights go out. I hope you're okay. I hope you've learned to see your own worth beyond other people's eyes. I hope you find someone who listens the way I used to and laughs with you the way I once did. As for me, I'm learning to live again. To see beauty in quiet places. To take pictures of things that don't talk back, because silence, I've realized, can be healing. Thank you for the years we had, even if they ended badly. I'll always be grateful for the version of us that existed before everything fell apart. Goodbye, Emily. Jason. When I finished, I sat there staring at the letter. My hand shook a little, not from sadness, but release. For the first time since that night, I felt light, like I'd finally put down something I'd been dragging behind me. I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and wrote her name on the front. Then I walked outside, down to the lake, and stood at the edge where the moonlight touched the water. The reflection looked calm, almost alive. Without thinking, I let the letter fall. The breeze caught it, carried it a few feet, then dropped it gently into the lake. I watched as the paper soaked, blurred, and sank. Every word dissolving into the water felt like a goodbye I never knew how to say out loud. The next morning, Nora noticed the change before I even said a word. You look lighter, she said with a small smile. I let something go last night, I told her. She nodded knowingly. Good. Sometimes that's the only way to make space for what's next. I smiled back. Yeah, maybe you're right. For the first time, I didn't feel like a man trying to escape his past. I felt like someone finally ready to live his future. That evening, I went for a walk and took my camera again. The world looked different. Brighter. The trees weren't just trees, they were proof that things can let go of their leaves and still stand tall. I pointed my lens at the horizon and whispered, almost to myself, thank you. To Emily. To the pain. To everything that had shaped me, because sometimes the things that break us are also the things that set us free. Autumn came gently to Willow Springs. The mornings were crisp now, and mist rolled over the lake like a living thing, curling around the edges of the cabin porch. I had begun to love the quiet rhythm of it all, the way the town woke slowly, the smell of roasted beans drifting from the driftwood bean, and the familiar voice of Nora greeting every customer by name. It had been nearly 4 months since I'd arrived. 3 since I'd written that letter, and for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't counting days backward, I was moving forward. Nora had become more than just a friendly face behind a counter. We'd started taking morning walks by the lake before she opened the cafe. She'd bring coffee in a thermos, I'd bring my camera, and we'd walk in easy silence until the sun lifted over the mountains. One morning, as we stood watching the sunlight break through the trees, she said quietly, "You ever notice how the world forgives itself every morning?" I turned to her, smiling faintly. "How do you mean?" She sipped her coffee. "No matter what storms came the night before, the sun still rises. The lake still reflects. The world doesn't hold grudges." I looked at her for a long time, feeling something shift quietly inside me. "Maybe we're supposed to learn from it," I said. "Maybe," she said with a smile. "Or maybe we just forget too often that we can start again, too." Her words lingered long after that morning ended. Days turned into weeks. The town was preparing for its small autumn fair, local food, old songs, laughter echoing through the square. Nora insisted I bring my camera and capture it. "It'll be good for you," she'd said. "You've spent months photographing silence. Try joy for once." She wasn't wrong. The fair was a burst of color and laughter. Kids ran through piles of leaves, couples danced to old folk tunes, and the air smelled like cinnamon and roasted corn. Nora helped at the pie stall, apron dusted with flour, hair tucked behind her ear. She caught me aiming my camera at her and laughed, throwing me a mock glare. "Don't you dare post that," she said. "I won't," I said, lowering the lens, but secretly knowing I would keep that photo. Not for the world, but for me. Because for the first time in years, I'd captured something that felt alive. Later that evening, after the fair ended, we sat by the lake again. The town lights glowed softly behind us. "I saw your photos," she said. "You have a way of making ordinary things look special." I chuckled. "I think they already are special. We just forget to look." She glanced at me then long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. It wasn't the electric rush I used to associate with love. It was something deeper, softer, like calm water reflecting the stars. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the desk by the window, scrolling through the pictures I'd taken. One of them, the one of Nora laughing, her eyes squinting, sunlight in her hair, stopped me. It hit me quietly. I was smiling again. Not because I'd moved on from the past, but because I'd learned how to live beyond it. Healing, I realized, wasn't about forgetting someone. It was about remembering yourself. A week later, the first snow began to fall. I was walking Nora home after closing the cafe when she stopped under a streetlight, watching the flakes drift down. "Looks like winter's early," she said. "Yeah," I said, pulling my jacket tighter. She looked at me then, that soft, steady gaze she always had. "You ever think about going back? To the city? To your old life?" I shook my head. "There's nothing there for me anymore." "And here?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, meeting her eyes. "I think, here, I've finally learned how to breathe again." For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she smiled, and it wasn't just a friendly one this time. It was the kind that said, "I understand." The kind that doesn't need words. We walked the rest of the way in silence. And yet, it didn't feel empty. It felt full of something new, something fragile but real. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of Emily, not with bitterness, but with peace. She had been my past, my heartbreak, my storm. But Nora, she was the quiet after it, and for the first time, I realized love didn't have to be loud or dramatic to be real. Sometimes, love is simply this: two people walking side by side, saying nothing, but knowing they're finally home. The first snow of the season fell that morning, thin white flakes drifting over the empty backyard, covering the brown grass, the swing set, the deck where I once grilled with friends who no longer called. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching the world soften under the cold. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't hurt. It used to. Silence meant remembering her laughter echoing through the kitchen. Remembering the way my daughter's little feet used to patter down the hallway. Remembering the night when everything fell apart, when a woman I thought I knew looked into a camera and called me, just a paycheck. Now, silence meant peace. Or something like it. It had been months since the divorce was finalized, months since I signed my name on a piece of paper that ended 8 years of marriage and began a lifetime of learning how to be alone again. Nora said healing isn't about forgetting, it's about accepting what happened without letting it define you. I didn't believe her at first, but she was right. The hurt was still there, sharp at times, dull at others. But it didn't control me anymore. I didn't check her social media. I didn't replay that live stream in my head. I didn't wonder what she was doing or who she was with. Instead, I learned to wonder about me. I started small, morning runs, cooking for myself instead of ordering takeout, fixing the broken door that had creaked since we moved in. It's strange how the smallest acts can feel like rebellion. Every screw tightened, every dish washed. It felt like reclaiming something I'd forgotten I owned, my life. Sometimes, Nora would join me for coffee after my morning run. She'd bring her camera, saying the sunrise made her want to capture everything. We'd sit on the porch, 2 cups steaming between us, watching the light spill over the horizon. She didn't talk much, and neither did I. But in those quiet moments, there was no need to fill the air with words. Healing speaks softly. One night, I found myself driving with no destination. It was one of those nights when the world felt too heavy to sit still in. The radio played an old country song, something about lost love and second chances, and I caught my reflection in the window. I didn't recognize him, not because he looked older, but because he finally looked free. When I reached the old neighborhood, I slowed down without meaning to. Her house was still there, the one we bought together, painted with dreams that never dried right. The porch light was on, like always. Through the window, I saw her silhouette. She was alone. The thought didn't hurt. It just existed. I parked across the street for a moment. Not to watch. Not to wonder. Just to say goodbye in a way words couldn't. Then I turned the car around and drove away. At work, things had changed too. People looked at me differently, not with pity, but with respect. I had started sharing small parts of my story at team meetings. Not for sympathy, but to show that life doesn't end when love does. When one of the younger guys told me his girlfriend cheated and he didn't know how to go on, I found myself saying something I never thought I'd believe. Sometimes, losing someone isn't punishment. It's permission to start over. He stared at me like I'd just given him oxygen. And maybe, in a way, I had. Winter turned to spring. The air changed. So did I. Nora's photography exhibit opened downtown. She invited me, hesitantly, saying she didn't want to make things awkward. I told her she couldn't if she tried. When I walked in, I was surrounded by light, portraits of people in raw, unguarded moments. Laughing, crying, living. Then I saw it, a photo of me, sitting on the porch, staring at the sunrise. The caption read, "The moment he chose peace." My throat tightened, not because it was me, but because, for the first time, someone had seen me as something more than what I'd lost. After the exhibit, I found Nora outside, nervously fiddling with her camera strap. "Too much?" she asked. I shook my head. "It's perfect." She smiled. "You've come a long way, Jason." "So have you." We stood there, the city lights painting gold lines across her face. Maybe this was something new. Or maybe it was just two broken people learning how to be whole in the same world again. Either way, it was enough. That night, I wrote in the journal I'd been keeping since the divorce. A habit Nora had encouraged. Entry #197. I used to think healing meant erasing the pain. Now I know it means carrying it differently. It's lighter now, not gone, but no longer defining me. I closed the journal and looked out the window. The moon hung low over the city, a quiet witness to the storm that once raged inside me. And for the first time in a long while, I whispered a thank you, not to anyone, not even to her, but to life, for not ending when I thought it did. Weeks later, an unexpected message appeared on my phone. It was from her, Emily. Short. Simple. "I'm sorry. I hope you're doing well." I stared at it for a while. There was a time I would have written back paragraphs. Now, I just typed 2 words. "I am." Then I turned off my phone and went outside. Nora was there, setting up her camera by the lake, the evening sun turning her hair gold. "Hey," I said. She looked up, smiling. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said softly. "For the first time, I really am." She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. We stood there together, watching the reflection of the sun shimmer on the water. It wasn't a grand moment. No dramatic music. No cinematic kiss. Just peace. The kind that comes after surviving everything you thought would break you. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about something I'd once heard. the heart doesn't heal when you forget the pain. It heals when you find something worth feeling again. I smiled because I finally had. The rain came back that night, soft, steady, almost polite, the kind of rain that didn't demand attention, but simply whispered, "I'm still here." I sat at my desk, the same one where I used to do bills, check emails, and read bedtime stories to a little girl who called me Daddy. A half-finished cup of tea sat beside me, steam fading into the dim room. In front of me was a box I hadn't opened in months. Inside were pieces of a life that no longer existed: wedding photos, a dried rose, a keychain from our honeymoon, and a folded piece of paper with my handwriting on it. A letter I never sent. I remembered writing it 2 weeks after the live stream, 2 weeks after she called me, just a paycheck, to an audience that laughed. Back then, I thought words could fix what was broken. That if she just understood how much she'd hurt me, she'd apologize, maybe even cry, and we'd find our way back. But I never sent it, because somewhere between writing the first word and the last, I realized she didn't want to come back. I picked up the letter now, unfolded it carefully, the paper soft and creased from time. "Emily, I don't know what to say that hasn't already been screamed in my head 1,000 times. You hurt me. You embarrassed me. You made me feel small in a world I built to make you feel safe, but I still wake up thinking about the way you laughed that first summer we met. How you burned pancakes on our first morning together. How you whispered you'd never leave me, even when I lost my job that one year. I don't hate you. I wish I could. I just miss the version of you that loved me before money and pride became the language we spoke. I hope one day you find what you were looking for. And I hope it doesn't destroy you the way this destroyed me. Jason." I exhaled slowly, folding it again. The words no longer burned. They were just echoes now, memories pressed into paper. The next morning, I found Nora sitting on the porch, sketching something in her notebook. She looked up when she saw me. "Couldn't sleep." Something like that. I sat beside her. "You ever find old pieces of yourself and not know what to do with them?" She smiled faintly. "All the time. Usually, I paint over them." "Paint over them?" "Yeah. Not to erase them, just to give them a new story." Her words lingered in the cool morning air. Maybe that's what I needed to do too, paint over my own pain with something new. That day, we decided to drive out of the city. No plans, no destination. Just open roads and music. Nora turned the radio up, and for the first time, I didn't think about how she'd once teased me for my terrible taste in music. That was someone else. This was now. We stopped by a lake, the same one we'd visited months ago. The water shimmered under the late afternoon sun. She took photos while I skipped stones. It felt normal, maybe even happy. When she joined me by the water, she looked at me curiously. "What's on your mind?" I hesitated. "Closure." From her. "From myself," I said quietly. She nodded, understanding without needing more. That's the thing about healing. People who've been broken know how to read silence. That night, I sat on my bed with the letter again. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Then I reached for my lighter. The same lighter I'd used on camping trips with Emily, when things were still easy, still bright. I held the flame beneath the paper. It curled, blackened, turned to ash. The smoke rose gently toward the ceiling, and I whispered, "Goodbye." And I meant it. The morning after I burned the letter, the world felt different. Not louder. Not brighter, just lighter. It's strange, you spend years believing freedom comes from getting what you want. But real freedom, I learned, comes when you stop needing it. The sunlight slipped through the curtains, touching the edge of my bed. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up thinking about loss. I woke up thinking about coffee. About the smell of rain. About maybe calling Nora to see if she wanted breakfast. Simple things. The kind of things life is made of. I drove down to the cafe by the lake, the one Nora liked for its perfect lighting. She was already there, camera in hand, snapping photos of a couple laughing over pancakes. When she saw me, she smiled, that soft, unguarded smile that didn't need words. "Morning," she said. "Morning. Sleep okay?" "Best in years." She laughed, the sound light as the breeze. "That's progress." We sat by the window, sunlight spilling over our table, and for a moment, I realized I wasn't waiting for the past to stop hurting anymore. I was simply living. After breakfast, Nora asked if I'd help her with a new photo project. She wanted to capture the idea of quiet resilience. Quiet resilience. I repeated, "Yeah," she said. "The strength that doesn't need to shout. The kind you only find after everything falls apart." I thought about that as she adjusted her lens, focusing on an old man feeding birds by the water. He looked peaceful, not untouched by life, but untouched by bitterness. Maybe that's what she meant. When she turned the camera toward me, I laughed. "What are you doing?" "Documenting progress," she said with a grin. "You're a part of it." I pretended to look annoyed, but deep down I didn't mind. For the first time, I wanted to be seen again. Later that afternoon, we drove out to the countryside, to a hill she'd found weeks ago. It overlooked a valley, the grass swaying in waves of green and gold. She laid out a blanket and sat down with her sketchbook, while I just watched the clouds move lazily across the sky. It felt like time had slowed down. No noise. No notifications. No ghosts, just the sound of wind and her pencil scratching against paper. I closed my eyes and thought about everything that had led here, every heartbreak, every sleepless night, every tear I didn't let fall. They weren't curses anymore. They were the steps that carried me here, to this hill, this peace, this moment. As the sun began to set, Nora spoke softly without looking up. "You ever think about going back?" I knew what she meant, to her. I asked. She nodded. I smiled faintly. "Not really. I don't think there's anything left to go back to." She glanced up then, eyes thoughtful. "You don't hate her, do you?" "No," I said after a pause. "I don't. I think hating someone means you still care too much." She smiled, that knowing kind of smile that comes from surviving your own heartbreaks. "Then you've really healed," she said quietly. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe I just learned that pain doesn't mean punishment. It just means we lived." That night, back home, I found myself sitting at the same desk again, but this time, I wasn't holding a letter. I was holding my camera, a birthday gift Nora had given me weeks ago. "Start capturing your own story," she'd said. "You always listen to everyone else's. Time to tell yours." So I did. I walked outside, into the quiet of the street, and started taking photos of the rain puddles reflecting streetlights, of a stray cat curled under a car, of the stars breaking through thin clouds. Each picture felt like a piece of me coming back to life. Not the man I used to be, the man I'd become. The next morning, I printed one of the photos, the sunrise over the lake, and framed it on my wall. Below it, I wrote a small note. The day I finally lived. It wasn't about a single moment. It was about all the small ones, the mornings, the quiet coffees, the forgiveness that came too slowly, but arrived all the same. Weeks passed. The world didn't change, but I did. Nora and I grew closer. Not in the way people expect, with grand declarations or perfect timing. It was gentler than that. Two lives running parallel until one day, they simply aligned. She never asked for promises. I never offered any. We just existed. Fully, freely, honestly, and somehow. That was enough. One evening, she invited me to her new gallery opening. The theme was still life. When I walked in, the first photo I saw stopped me cold. It was me, standing by the lake, sunlight on my face, holding the camera she gave me. The caption read, "Healing in human form." I turned to her, speechless. She smiled. "You told me once you didn't recognize yourself. I thought maybe this would help." I looked at the photo again. She was right. The man in that frame wasn't broken anymore. He wasn't angry. He was alive. After the crowd thinned, we stood on the gallery's rooftop. The city lights shimmered below, the night air cool against our skin. I looked at her. "You ever wonder how we got here?" "All the time," she said softly. "But I've learned not to question peace when it finally shows up." I laughed quietly. "That's a good rule." She looked at me then, really looked, not at the man I used to be, or the one I was trying to become, but at me, and in her eyes, I saw everything I thought I'd lost: trust, calm, and something dangerously close to love. Before we left, she handed me a small wrapped box. "Open it later," she said. At home, I placed it on the same desk where the letter once burned. When I opened it, I found a photo of me standing under the sunrise and a note on the back: "You were never just a paycheck. You were a story worth telling." I sat there, tears slipping quietly down my face, not from pain, but from something far softer: gratitude. That night, I stepped outside, camera in hand, and took one last picture. Not of the sky, or the city, or the past, but of my reflection in the window. For the first time, I didn't see a man who'd been left. I saw a man who'd stayed, through heartbreak, through loss, through every quiet night that tried to break him, and in that moment, I realized this was it. The day I finally lived.